Hey everyone, Robert Ferringo with Doc Sports Services. Here with the one and only Nolan Patrick from Strike Point Sports. Man, look at that lush set of hair that he still has. Like, I'm clinging to
Yeah,
these things, but that guy's still good to go. All right, we
I'm
are here to
trying.
talk some NBA action. The playoffs have started. You can pretty much have that line of demarcation for the NBA season. It's really three separate seasons. You have the early season NBA, then you have the stretch run where things get a little quirky, and now we have the playoffs. And Nolan, I thought that you and I would be the perfect two people to talk about the opening weekend of the NBA playoffs because we've been so bad. Like you and I have been awful. The playoffs have only been 1 week. We still have 2 months here, so no panic setting in. But it's just been impressive how things have not gone the way that we have thought they would. What are some of the things that have jumped out at you through the first week of the playoffs?
It's interesting because you said that stretch run, and we here at Strike Point Sports, I mean, to be honest, we dominated that stretch run. I felt like we could not lose a game in that stretch run. We had all sorts of, confidence going into the playoffs, and then teams that we thought would show up ended up showing up in the second game. We thought Miami and Minnesota would show up in that first play-in game. They both laid an egg, and then lo and behold, they show up in the second game. One thing that's really jumped out was once the playoffs started, those teams that were really, really good played really, really well. The Celtics and the Nuggets looked outstanding in their first games, just absolutely outstanding. And if I'm the Milwaukee Bucks with Giannis being a little banged up, I'd be a little wary of the Celtics.
Can we both agree that the play-in system is absolute trash? That's like a worthless 4 games of basketball. That's kind of difficult to handicap and just kind of worthless all around. Are we in agreement on that? Or do you believe that, hey, more basketball is better and more games to bet on is better and more opportunities is better?
I really don't like it much at all. I mean, I think it gives those teams that are in, 12th and 11th and 10th place a chance late into the season like we saw in the Western Conference. So that made for a fun, last few days. But overall, no, I don't like it at all. Not one bit.
Yeah, I think if you want to take the 8 and 9 teams and have them play 1 game to see who gets the 8 seed, I could get behind that. But the system as presently constituted is worthless. And I think moving forward for me personally, I won't be betting those games. That was just kind of a mess last week. So, all right, we are recording this on Monday. So tonight we have Brooklyn and Philadelphia. This will be up all Tuesday. So we'll get to those games in a minute. Real quick, anything about the Brooklyn-Philadelphia series suggests that it's going to be anything that other than what we saw in game 1, which was Philadelphia kind of humiliate and toy with the Nets?
I really liked Brooklyn in game 1. I thought they were going to jump up and surprise Philadelphia. I thought Philly was going to, kind of take them for granted. And Philly just got points from, it seemed, everyone in their lineup. And which was surprising is for a while, Brooklyn played very, very well. They shot the ball well. I swear halfway through that game, it was 3-point make after 3-point make after 3-point make. But then Philly just pulled away and showed that they're a dominant team. I would say at the absolute worst, Philly wins that series 4-1. At the absolute worst.
I tend to agree with you. And it's interesting that even after the upsets that we saw, there's only 2 spreads that really changed from game 1 to game 2. One of them was this Brooklyn-Philadelphia spread getting inflated. That number's 10 points for a playoff game. Is there value on the Nets here in game 2? Do you think that they have a little bit better effort in this one? Or is Philadelphia just that much better than a Brooklyn team that really solidified its playoff spot with one roster for a good part of the year, and now sans Durant, sans Irving, they're just kind of a bunch of role players that probably don't deserve their seed.
Right. Outside of Mikal Bridges, who for a stretch in game 1 looked like the best player on the planet, I don't think that the Nets really stand much of a chance. Joel Embiid just did his thing. He didn't really play spectacularly, and I see him absolutely dominating game 2. I could see if you bet on game 2 and you take, Philly, I could see you being really nervous for a while. The Nets keeping it close, the Nets keeping it close, the Nets keeping it close. And then I just see Embiid specifically dominating late in that game and for Philly to pull away and win by 13, 14 points.
Yeah, I was gonna say this one feels like a 13-point game, doesn't it? I have Brooklyn, so I'm hoping that is not the case. Going on to the nightcap tonight, Golden State at Sacramento. I mean, people have written about it, talked about it all season. It's been kind of comical how bad Golden State has been on the road. One of those things that you think just can't possibly continue. You know, that's the regular season. Now it's the playoffs. They're going to show up in the playoffs on the road, certainly, right? I mean, do we just have to continue to bet against Golden State when they are outside of their home arena, just kind of blindly for as long as they're in the playoffs?
I mean, I don't want to give too much away because this is the game that I'm actually on this evening, but Golden State over the course of, what feels like the better part of a decade, always seems to win at least one road game in a series. If you were to go back and check all the series that they've played, they always tend to win a game on the road, and I like them to win the game tonight. Sacramento played about as good as they could in game one. They scored 126 points. Monk and Fox combined for 70. I mean, that crowd was absolutely electric. I don't think the crowd's going to be any different in game two, but I really like Golden State to just steal game two, regardless of how well Sacramento plays in this spot. I think Golden State just has the will to win and wins this road game. And then I like Golden State in 6 there.
Yeah, I'm always a big fan. One of my overriding philosophies in betting in the playoffs is I always take the team that I think is going to win the series in game two. Take the best team in game two. Game one results can be a little bit fluky. Okay. Like as you mentioned, teams ride waves of emotion. Emotion from previous series can come and carry over, or a letdown can carry over into game one. But I feel like game two, the team that you think is going to win the series, that's the team that you take, especially in these small spreads. That, it's 1.5 number on this game. So I'm a big believer in that. Now, let me get your feeling on the zigzag theory real quick, because as we talk about both of these games, we think, Brooklyn got blown out in game one. We think they're going to put up a little better fight in game two. Golden State lost in game one. We think they're going to have a better chance to win in game two. How much does that zigzag theory play into your playoff betting philosophy?
I do really like the zigzag theory overall, and as a premise for betting in the playoffs, especially when I feel that teams are somewhat even. This is a really interesting playoffs because you've seen a lot of favorites favored by double figures in game one. It just shows how good the good teams are. I passed on that Philly and Brooklyn game, but I understand why somebody would zigzag in that series, even though I would take Philly if I had to. I love the zigzag theory in the Golden State game. Golden State losing game one. I thought to myself when I'm looking, Golden State's not losing game two. I love the zigzag theory there. And there is another game going tomorrow that I really like the zigzag theory. So I always take a look at it, but I'm not your typical NBA handicapper because I don't fully believe in the theory overall, but it's always in the back of my mind.
You're also not the typical NBA handicapper because you win a lot more than most NBA bettors do. So, all right, well, listen, you teed up the transition there. So let's get into a little bit of Tuesday's games. What game are you talking about? What one do you see a team that maybe didn't play well in game one bouncing back in game two?
Yeah, I want to say that it's that early game. I want to say that it's the Hawks. I really do, because before this series started, I actually have told a couple of people that I think Atlanta wins one of the 2 games in Boston, but I have completely changed my opinion on that series. I actually would take the Phoenix Suns in game 2. That's the team that I would zigzag overall. I think that the Clippers, played really, really well, but overall, I don't like the Clippers to win again, even though I don't like the Clippers to even cover, even though they have had success overall in their last 7 games in Phoenix. They're 5-2 against the spread. but the Clippers are actually just 2-6 against the spread in their last 8 games following a straight up win, and 1-5 against the spread in their last 6 games following an against the spread win. So I would take the Suns in game 2 because specifically they got nothing out of their bench, and I see their bench playing considerably better in game 2 at home.
Okay, some people will know exactly what I'm talking about. Other people will think that this doesn't make sense, but I kind of took Phoenix in the first game of that series because I didn't think that number made any sense at all. It looked so ridiculous to me. I thought that number should have been around 3.5, 4. So some people be like, well, why don't you just take the Clippers then if they're getting 7.5 points? Because it was one of those numbers that was so odd and so off that I was like, okay, I'm going to go with the books on this one. And of course, it didn't go that way. Dominated that game and won outright. So, what is it about the Suns that makes you think that they can bounce back here? I mean, I know the Clippers are banged up, but they have some veterans, they have some talent. It's Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs, man. Playoff Kawhi Leonard, you almost never want to bet against. Phoenix just never had the opportunity to get the ball rolling downhill after that Kevin Durant trade. So while on paper, you can see the talent. What is it about them that makes you think that they are ready for a blowout in game 2?
So specifically, I really feel that everything happened to go the Clippers' way. Now, take this with a grain of salt. When I say everything went their way, how many times, because without Paul George, Russell Westbrook has to almost be, a really, really significant player for this team. Russell Westbrook went 3 for 19 from the floor in game 1, and they still won the game. That's not going to happen again in game 2. He might shoot that poorly again in game 2, but the Clippers are not going to get everything to go their way. The Suns, a couple interesting numbers that really bounce off the page. The Suns had 4 guys score at least 18 points. Those 4 guys were 34 for 62 from the floor and 20 of 23 from the foul line. So those 4 guys, and Chris Paul was only 3 points shy of a triple-double. Okay, the Suns are a very good basketball team. We know it. They've been there. They've got a lot of really good players. Only 4 guys really did anything. Paul kind of did his thing. They got nothing from their bench. Their bench is going to play considerably better. One of the things that I really take a look at in the playoffs is when a bench plays poorly in one game at home, they typically play much better the second time. Role players normally don't have 2 consecutive bad games at home in the playoffs. Stars do their thing. Role players play well at home, and I like Phoenix's role players to really show up in game 2.
I think that's a great point. I think that's a really intuitive point. I think that's a really good point that I've never actually thought of, but it makes a lot of sense because the pressure isn't just on the star players in these postseasons. These role players, they know where they are on the totem pole. They know where they are on the hierarchy. They got to earn their money. They got to earn their place. They got to earn their minutes by producing when they are called on. Nobody expects, someone from the Suns bench to pop off for 40 points, but they got to contribute. Right. And I think that that's a really good point right there. Now, let's go back to that Atlanta-Boston series because the Hawks are losers. I don't like Trae Young. I don't like this team. I don't like anything about them. Yet I still feel kind of like still feel myself getting sucked back into believing that they might be due for just kind of a weird result. We've seen it before, like what they did to Miami in the play-in game, going on the road and dominating that game from start to finish. And we've seen what Miami has done since then. So Atlanta kind of has that ability, but is Boston just so far ahead of them in terms of chemistry, cohesion, overall offensive capability that this one is kind of like that Philadelphia series where it feels like 4-1 is being kind of generous? Or, do you think Atlanta, they might be able to steal 1 or 2 here and keep another couple games competitive?
So let me preface this by saying I'm passing this game. I'm not taking either team in this game. I'm going to skip entirely. If I had to take this game, it would be the Celtics in this game, but I'm not going on it. I liked Atlanta. I think we had actually discussed that I liked Atlanta to win one of these first couple of games, but now I'm completely against that. The Hawks are 0-7 against the spread in their last 9 games against teams with winning home percentages of 600 or better. So when they play against good teams on the road, they don't cover. They're also 4-9 against the spread in their last 13 road games overall. They're 0-5 against the spread in their last 5 games in Boston, and 0-6 against the spread in their last 6 games versus the Celtics. So I'm going to pass because I want to take the Hawks, but good God, the fact that they even came close to covering that first game when they were down 30, that was only because the Celtics pretty much just said, "Yeah, we're good. We're good. We're going to blow you out again."
Yeah, 10.5 points to a team that has Trae Young. But you talk about the zigzag theory. Atlanta's been rolling on the zigzag theory for about 3 months now. They win a game, they lose a game. They win a game, they lose a game. They set that record for the most consecutive games within one game of being 500. So it absolutely would not surprise me if they came out and came to play in game 2. I don't think they had the juice to get the road win, but again, 10.5 points, man. That's a lot of points to be laying out for a team that has a couple all-star caliber players on the team. So, all right, I can't believe that we saved this game for last because I know it's the game that you have the most interest in, but your Knicks managed to steal game 1 on the road. Thibodeau, man, they put him and his teams in an underdog role, and they always seem to perform against the number and on the hardwood. Does Cleveland bounce back in what is essentially a must-win game? They can't go down 0-2 heading to Madison Square Garden for playoff basketball. This was a team that early in the season looked like it could be right there in the mix with Boston, Philadelphia, Milwaukee among the East powerhouse teams. What do we expect from Cleveland here?
If I'm a Cavs fan, I'm really, really nervous for a couple of reasons. One, the Cavs guards were phenomenal. They were absolutely phenomenal. I loved watching the two of them play basketball. They were so much fun. Okay. They were knocking down shots. They were playing good defense. They were pushing the tempo. Allen and Mobley in the interior were supposed to be two of the better big men that we've seen, and they really played well all year. I swear, I felt like I didn't notice either one of them playing. And I don't really feel, the Knicks have guys that work hard on the interior. Obviously Mitchell Robinson doesn't do a lot when it comes to scoring the basketball, but he's one of the best offensive rebounders in the NBA. Julius Randle, he averages 10 rebounds a game, but I feel like a lot of his rebounds are longer rebounds or when nobody's anywhere near the basket, he doesn't really battle. But if I'm the Cavs, I'm worried because Mitchell played so well. He was dynamic. They still didn't win the game at home. And outside of that last run where they took the lead because the Knicks just started throwing the ball away, the Knicks had them at arm's reach the entire game. The Knicks have the Hart Foundation. And for any of you wrestling fans out there, when Hartenstein and Hart are making all those big plays, you just got to love it. You got to love what the Knicks are doing. And something else to remember about the Knicks, anybody that's watched them all year long knows that Quickly brings a ton off the bench. He brings so much to that team in the second unit. He played terribly. And the Knicks still won the game in Cleveland. And if I had to go on that game, I would not zigzag. I would take the New York Knicks plus the points because the Knicks are 37-15-1 against the spread in their last 53 road games. And they're 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 games versus a team with a winning percentage of 600 or better. The underdog, and when they're on the road, Thibodeau gets them to play.
Yeah, 6-2 against the spread in their last 8 games in Cleveland, and you touched on the number. They're covering over 71% of their games on the road over the last 53 road games. This is their role. I don't think I'm going to bite on the Knicks in game 2. I disagree with you on this one. I feel like if you believe in the zigzag theory at all, Cleveland kind of sets up perfectly for it, right? They've been so good at home all season. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time seeing them losing both of these games in their own arena. Interesting that number shaded a little bit lower. It was 5.5 at tip off in the first game. Now it's down to 5. I'm very curious to see where that number is. If they split these games, where that number is going to land for game 3 in New York. Are the Knicks a favorite in game 3? I think that they might be a small home favorite there. So this might be one to sit back and watch to see how it sets up the rest of the series. And that's the thing. Don't get anxious. That's going to be one of my final takeaways is, like I said, we're still in April. We got basketball till June.
Oh, yeah.
These long series, there's a lot of series ahead. From a betting standpoint, don't get anxious. Just let things play out. The story's going to unfold and pick your spot. So, all right. Any final thoughts that you want to leave the folks with?
I will. I have 3. And it's interesting because it's not really my style. I release these plays every once in a while, but I want anybody that watches this to think about 3 trends that have really jumped off the page to me. And again, this isn't my cup of tea, but anybody that likes to be a totals bettor in the NBA, there's 3 things that I want you to be aware of. In Boston and Atlanta, the under is 21-9 in the last 30 Celtics games when they're playing on 2 or more days rest. So when the Celtics are rested, they tend to clamp down defensively, and it's the unders hit 21 of their last 30 games. For Knicks games, the under is 16-5 in the last 21 Knicks quarterfinals games. So 16-5. That's a lot of money to be made right there. And then lastly, the over is 9-1-1 in the last 11 Suns games following an against the spread loss, and 5-0-1 in the last 6 Suns games following a straight up loss.
Yeah, you have to think that if they're going to win game 2, it's going to be a shootout. It's going to be on the strength of their offense. They just don't have the depth, defensively to really make stands. They're going to make shots. If they're going to beat people, they're going to outscore and overwhelm people by the sheer force of their offensive power. You mentioned those under trends. It's the playoffs. Okay, this is a different brand of basketball than what we saw in the regular season. It's not Tuesday night in December. These guys are coming to play and bring defensive intensity every game. That's why I think we saw on Friday and Saturday, I think it was like 6 out of 8 games went under. We had an overflow of scoring on Sunday, but don't get caught expecting points when these teams are bringing the defensive intensity every night. All right, he's Nolan Patrick of Strike Point Sports. I am Robert Ferringo. We will be having these videos throughout the playoffs. Until next time, carpe diem and good luck.